The secrecy around this affair was almost perfect, until her husband showed up at the restaurant with a plan that would turn the evening upside down. This is a story that dives into trust and betrayal, one I learned the hard way. We were in Ember's Flame Bistro, an intimate, warmly lit spot in the heart of Seattle. The jazz notes floating in the air set a cozy mood, while shadows hugged the dimly lit corners, guarding secrets. Maggie, age 45, sat by the window, her fingers tracing circles along the rim of her wine glass as she fidgeted nervously. Across from her sat Sam, a new friend, or maybe something a little more than that, his easy, confident smile sending an unexpected thrill through her. Sam had picked this hidden gem of a spot, just far enough off the radar to feel safe. Tonight, Maggie had gone the extra mile with her appearance, making sure every detail was spot on. She knew the subtle power of leaving a lasting impression. Excusing himself, Sam got up, mentioning he'd be back in a moment, and disappeared toward the restrooms. Alone now, Maggie tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, checking her lipstick in a compact mirror. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of an older couple seated a few tables over, eyeing her with a bit too much curiosity. A chill crept up her spine, but she brushed it off, focusing on the anticipation of the evening. But as Sam lingered, a growing sense of unease settled in. She pulled out her phone to scroll through her messages, trying to distract herself, when her phone suddenly rang. Her heart skipped. Matt, her husband of over a dozen years, was calling, even though he was supposed to be at work tonight. Clearing her throat, she answered, keeping her tone as calm as she could manage. "Hey, honey." Matt's voice was steady, but it carried a new edge that made her uneasy. "Maggie, where are you right now?" A bead of sweat formed as she forced a casual laugh. "Just out with a few friends from work, catching up." "Why, what's up?" There was a pause, thick and heavy, before Matt responded. "That's interesting. Why don't you turn around?" Her heart pounded as she scanned the restaurant. In a dark corner, Matt was sitting alone, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite place. He lifted his hand in a small, deliberate wave, his eyes never leaving hers. Her stomach twisted as she whispered into the phone. "Matt? What are you doing here? I thought you had a late shift." "Change of plans?" he replied smoothly, yet with a firmness that sent a shiver down her spine. "I thought I'd stop by for a quick bite." Imagine my surprise when I saw my wife here, looking rather comfortable with someone I don't recognize. The accusation stung, but she kept her composure, forcing a soft smile. "Oh, Matt, don't be so dramatic. It's just an old friend. No reason to turn this into something it's not. And by the way, who's that woman sitting with you?" Matt's gaze drifted to the woman across from him, who wore a slight, knowing smile. "Maggie, this is Karen. My lawyer." Maggie's stomach dropped, but she took a breath, steeling herself. She lifted her wine glass, stood gracefully, and with her head held high, walked over to Matt's table. "Well, Karen, nice to meet you," she said politely, her eyes fixed on Matt. "So, Matt, a lawyer over dinner? Is there something going on that I should know?" Leaning back in his chair, Matt's expression was calm, a hint of amusement on his face. "Oh, Maggie, let's just say it's a complicated situation. Not exactly what I expected for the evening, I'll admit. I just hope I'm not the one being played here." Maggie felt her cheeks flush, but she managed a soft laugh, turning to Karen with a polite smile. "Can you believe he's being this theatrical? I'm just out with an old friend from my music days. Nothing more." Karen's expression remained neutral, professional. "You'd be surprised, Maggie. Life has a way of throwing us unexpected twists, which keeps people like me busy." Maggie forced another smile, but her heart was racing. "A divorce lawyer, Matt? You really think this dinner calls for something so extreme?" Matt took a slow sip from his glass, setting it down as he leaned forward. "Maggie, I'm not one to jump to conclusions. But maybe you could tell us more about Sam. This friend of yours, is he just a friend?" Maggie's smile didn't falter, but her grip on her wine glass tightened. "Matt, please. Sam's an old colleague, a pianist. We're just catching up, that's all." Musicians tend to be expressive, but there's nothing to it. Matt raised an eyebrow, letting out a quiet, knowing chuckle. Expressive, huh? Matt remarked, leaning back with a hint of sarcasm. Let's just hope he saves his expressive side for the piano. Maggie forced a soft laugh, waving her hand dismissively. Oh, Catherine, take note of my husband's flair for the dramatic. Honestly, Matt, you're reaching. Catherine merely raised an eyebrow, a look of amused indifference on her face. But Matt's expression turned more intense as he leaned in closer. Maggie, let's set the record straight. Are you honestly telling me that you and Sam are just friends? Nothing more? Maggie's gaze flicked from Catherine back to Matt, her eyes glinting with a slight defiance. Absolutely. We're just friends. Unless, of course, Catherine here thinks a shared passion for music is suspicious. She chuckled, locking eyes with Catherine, who returned the chuckle politely. Not at all, Maggie, Catherine replied smoothly, her voice level. But I've heard enough to know this isn't your typical dinner date. Matt leaned back, appearing almost amused by the whole exchange. All right, Maggie. But I'd be curious to hear Sam's take on this friendship. He crossed his arms, his gaze steady and unwavering. I'm sure it'd be enlightening to get his side. Maggie's confident smile faltered for a moment before she quickly regained her composure, lifting her chin slightly. Fine, Matt. When he comes back, he'll confirm it's nothing but a friendly dinner. Though I'll admit, I don't know why he's taking so long. She forced a small smile, even as her fingers gripped her glass tighter. Matt reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen. Actually, we don't have to wait. Sam might be joining us soon, but I thought you'd appreciate hearing his thoughts right now. He held up his phone, his face unreadable. Maggie's stomach churned as the recording played. Matt's voice came first. So, that brunette by the window, your friend, huh? Sam's laugh came through, sounding too casual, too self-assured. Yeah, you could say that, he replied with a smirk. Why do you ask? Oh, just curious, Matt continued, his tone light and almost amused. Some people have a way of charming others. Figured maybe you'd have some tips? Sam chuckled, sounding pleased. It's a gift, I guess. Some guys just have it. Matt's voice was calm, with a hint of teasing. They say brunettes are full of surprises. Would you agree? Sam laughed low, clearly amused. Surprises? That's putting it mildly. She's a firecracker, that one. I gotta watch myself around her, or she'll wear me out. There was a pause, then Matt's voice came back. Good luck keeping up. Sam let out a smug laugh. Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty lucky. Just hoping she doesn't run me ragged tonight, if you know what I mean. The recording ended, and silence fell over the table as Maggie's face flushed red. She straightened herself, clearing her throat as Catherine's gaze remained unwavering, while Matt watched her with an expectant, calm expression. With a nervous laugh, Maggie tried to play it off. Matt, you know how men exaggerate. He's just showing off. It doesn't mean anything. Matt raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk forming. Is that so? Just a bit of friendly banter, huh? It all sounded pretty vivid for a joke. But go on, I'm listening. Maggie gave a soft laugh, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Honestly, Matt, Sam likes to embellish. He has a wild imagination and probably thought he was being funny. She glanced at Catherine, seeking a sympathetic ear. Catherine, surely you understand. Men say things like that to impress one another. It's all just talk. Catherine's polite smile remained, with just a trace of amusement, but no sympathy. I think I've seen plenty for one night, Maggie. This hasn't been a typical dinner, but I do have to thank Matt for the invitation. It's been informative. Maggie clenched her jaw, but before she could say anything, she saw Sam finally returning from the restroom, looking a little shaken as he scanned the tables. Matt leaned back, a small smirk on his face as he motioned subtly in Sam's direction. Look, Maggie, it seems your friend is back. I'd bet he's wondering where you went. Maggie called out to Sam, who approached, his expression rattled, not immediately noticing Matt and Catherine at the table. Maggie, you're not going to believe it, he said, sounding slightly panicked. Someone locked the restroom door. I was stuck in there forever. He looked around, his eyes finally landing on Matt, his face twisting with a mix of shock and suspicion. Wait, was that you? Are you out of your mind? Matt raised an eyebrow, calm and unfazed, while Maggie shot Sam a pleading look. Sam, she said hurriedly, this is my husband, Matt. Why don't you go ahead and tell him that we're just friends? Her voice quivered slightly as she gestured toward Matt. David's face drained of color as realization hit him. Oh, yeah, sure, he stammered, eyes wide and darting between Amelia and Ethan. I just remembered. I think I left my phone at the bar. Better go grab it. With an awkward nod, he turned and made a swift exit, not looking back as he slipped out of the restaurant. Amelia watched him leave, her expression frozen between frustration and disbelief. Ethan shook his head, letting out a soft chuckle. Well, Amelia, David might have charm, but he doesn't seem all that reliable in a tough spot. Catherine stood with a faint smile of amusement, gathering her purse. Ethan rose as well, giving Amelia one last look. Oh, and by the way, he added, a satisfied glint in his eyes, you'll be handling the tab for your little dinner. Amelia clenched her jaw, holding her composure, as she signaled for the waiter and handed him her card with a forced smile. But when he returned, he wore an apologetic look. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said softly, but it seems your card isn't going through. Ethan and Catherine had already turned to leave, but Amelia called after him, her voice laced with irritation. Ethan! My card isn't working. Did you do something? Ethan paused, glancing back with a faint smirk. I didn't think it'd be an issue. I figured your friend would cover it. Are you serious, Ethan? She hissed, barely keeping her voice steady. You're really going to leave me here like this? His smirk widened. You're a resourceful woman. I'm sure you'll figure it out. With that, he turned and walked out with Catherine, leaving Amelia to face the bill alone. She took a deep breath, seething with a mix of anger and humiliation. The waiter stood nearby, looking sympathetic. Is there another card you'd like to try, ma'am? Swallowing her pride, Amelia muttered, I'll sort it out, and quickly scanned her contact list. Her eyes landed on her friend Sarah, who arrived minutes later, covering the bill with a sympathetic look. As Amelia finally left the restaurant, anger simmered beneath the surface. She replayed the evening's events in her mind, struggling to comprehend how Ethan could confront her so publicly, then abandon her. By the time she reached home, the house felt eerily quiet. She barely had her coat off when she heard a car pull up outside. Moments later, Ethan entered, his face blank as he headed to the bedroom, packing a small suitcase without a word. An hour passed before Amelia, barely containing her frustration, marched into the bedroom. Ethan, what was that? She demanded, her voice shaking. You brought Catherine just to humiliate me? Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Ethan let out a bitter laugh, his eyes flashing with anger. Embarrassing? Try being the husband who discovers his wife sneaking around with another man. If anyone should be embarrassed, it's me. She clenched her fists, her voice rising. You're blowing this out of proportion, Ethan. You're really willing to throw away our marriage over one night out with a friend? You're being ridiculous. Ethan's expression softened slightly, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Amelia, I loved you. What we had was real. But tonight, seeing you with him, it's clear things have changed. So, yes, I want a divorce. Her face twisted in anger. A divorce? Over some nonsense you overheard in the bathroom? You're being petty. In a burst of frustration, she grabbed her purse and hurled it across the room, just barely missing him. Get out, Ethan! Stop making these wild accusations. I don't deserve this. Ethan took a deep breath, his shoulders tense as he picked up his duffel bag. He looked at her one last time, his face tired but resolute. Amelia, you made your choices. Now I'm making mine. With that, he walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. The next morning, Amelia was jolted awake by a knock at the door. Opening it, she found Catherine standing there, holding a thick stack of documents. Her face hardened as she took the papers, her heart sinking as she flipped through them. Catherine's expression was calm, almost sympathetic, but it only fueled Amelia's anger. Once Catherine left, Amelia called her own attorney, Stephen, a high-profile lawyer known for his aggressive tactics. By that afternoon, she was strategizing, determined to portray Ethan as a paranoid husband making wild assumptions. Confident she could turn things in her favor, she vowed to fight tooth and nail. But as she prepared for court, a nagging question crept into her mind: how had Ethan known where to find her that night? She'd been so careful. As Amelia faced the consequences of her choices, the reality of her actions settled in deeply. Her life had been defined by moments of thrill and secrecy, but in the end, they had only led to heartbreak, loss, and an emptiness she couldn't ignore. Alone in the quiet, she was left with memories of what could have been, and the hard lesson that trust, once broken, was not easily rebuilt. Her conversation with Sarah was a turning point. Sarah's words about actions and consequences struck a chord, finally breaking through Amelia's defenses. She understood now that her decisions had impacted more than just herself. They had dismantled the very foundation of her life and left her isolated in the ruins. Determined to find closure, she reached out to her attorney, Stephen, with a newfound humility. Her pride had been stripped away, and in its place, there was a quiet resolve to face what lay ahead. She wanted to leave behind bitterness and resentment, to step away from her mistakes and the pain they had caused. Though the path forward would be difficult, Amelia knew it was time to rebuild her life, one small step at a time. It was a journey she hadn't anticipated, but in her solitude, she hoped to rediscover herself and eventually find peace. She realized that starting over, though daunting, was a chance to become a better person, a small glimmer of hope amidst the regret.